Welcome to Big 12 This Week, presented by Dr. Pepper.
A very warm and happy Veterans Day as we welcome you to Big 12 This Week. I'm Chad McKee. Coming up, what do the latest college football playoff rankings say about the Big 12 Conference as a whole? And what impact might Saturday's showdown in Waco have on those? Plus, we get up close and personal with the driving force behind the unbeaten Oklahoma State Cowboy defense, Emmanuel Ogbah. Off the top, let's reset those college football playoff rankings. The second one of the season coming out on Tuesday night. Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, and then Notre Dame is into the top four this week after LSU's loss to Alabama. Iowa is in at number 5. Yeah, well, I'll let you get to that in a moment.
You beat Indiana.
Jumped 4 spots with a win over Indiana. How about that? I'm going to let you explain that to me in just a moment.
Is that computing, Chad?
Baylor holding steady with a win over Kansas State. Then Stanford, Oklahoma State, the big mover. Cowboys up 6 after their win over TCU. LSU 9. Then Utah, Florida, and Oklahoma bumped up 3 spots after their victory at home over the Iowa State Cyclones. That voice you heard is a familiar one. It's that of our college football analyst, the former Buckeye Master of Analytics, John Berger. You're an analytics guy. What do the analytics of the committee tell you about what they are thinking about Big 12 teams right now?
Yeah, I think they're struggling. I think when you look at the committee and what they're having to sort through, it's obvious that the Big 12 is back with the backloaded schedule. I think that's where they're struggling right now, is to figure out how to weight these teams right now, knowing that the Big 12 has that backloaded schedule. I expect it to sort out. I think the Big 12 will be fine. I think my biggest concern is that we mentioned last week is having a collection of one-loss teams, no conference title. I think that's a bad thing. I think the Big 12 trying to get somebody into that title game, I think they need to have an undefeated champion.
Well, we just mentioned it a moment ago. Iowa leapfrogs past Baylor after beating Indiana. They go up 4 spots, and Baylor takes on a Kansas State team on the road. They win that game. The numbers may look a little closer than the game actually was, but specifically, what do you think the committee is thinking about Baylor, the highest-rated Big 12 team?
Nothing's changed, in my opinion. I don't think there's anybody in the country, at least if you've seen this team play, is questioning Baylor offensively. That's not an issue. This team's exciting. They put a lot of points on the board. They're consistent with what they do. Doesn't really matter who the quarterback is. There's a formula. They know how to master that formula, deploy it against their competition, do very, very well. I don't think that that's the issue. I think the biggest issue for the committee is, can this team go play a marquee offense or a marquee program and stand up defensively? I think that's the biggest question. And until they answer that bell, then I think they're going to maybe not get that national respect that they probably deserve.
And so Saturday night becomes ultra important.
It's important.
We will talk about that more in just a moment. But the big mover in the Big 12, Oklahoma State, huge win for them. You know, Mason Rudolph throws for 5. Jarrett Stidham makes his first start at quarterback, throws for 3 scores. He runs for another, hits Corey Coleman a couple of times. Things clicked along pretty good. Evaluate what you saw from Jarrett Stidham. What did you think of him specifically?
It's exactly what I've said the last 2 or 3 weeks. They've given him the keys to the car, and they just want to keep it between the white lines.
Don't run it off into a ditch.
Don't run it off into a ditch. Just make sure you find all the right exit ramps. Blinkers, 10 and 2 position. Look, when you got the number, first of all, the offensive line for Baylor, they get rid of the football quickly, so it's hard to get to him and apply pressure. So it's hard to rattle the quarterback based on kind of the style of play. He makes good decisions, and plus all those explosive playmakers he's got around him. So, in my opinion, this is not going to be about Stidham. I give him all the credit in the world. He's doing exactly what they're asking him to do. The biggest thing for me is are they going to be able to stand up defensively? And this is going to be a big test this weekend.
Mentioned 2 more touchdowns for Corey Coleman. That's where we begin with John's big men on campus for this past weekend. And this guy has reserved a spot in this pretty much every week of the season. 7 straight games, John, with 2 or more touchdowns. 17 entire teams have failed to score 20 touchdowns. That's how many Corey Coleman has.
11 catches, 216. Let me just let that hang
in the air.
Do the math
for me there.
Let me let that hang in the air just for a second.
11 for 216.
Yeah.
Goodness, it's 20 yards of play.
Just another day at the office.
That's exactly right. That's what it's become. You're
we
right.
want to give him the Heisman now anyway.
You know, Ryan Simmons, the middle linebacker, went down in the middle of this Oklahoma State defense. This is his replacement, and he has the pick 6 that essentially sealed.
Yeah, 2 interceptions and a touchdown.
Up those rankings.
I think both could, but I think, Corey Coleman, to win the Heisman, you got to have huge numbers, which Coleman clearly has, and you got to have a little bit of steak and a little bit of sizzle. And sizzle's really important. And I think Corey Coleman kind of has that sizzle. He has that swag. He'll get plenty of opportunities on national TV. One of them's on Saturday. He puts those kind of numbers up, then I think he skyrockets in that race.
Tough for wide receivers to win the Heisman these days.
Yeah, but when you're 11 catches, 216 every week.
If somebody's he's the guy.
Start to stack up.
I agree. Well, the Cowboys win over TCU means there's a shakeup atop the power rankings. You look, Oklahoma State's up from 3 to 1. Bears and Sooners down a spot each. TCU down from 1 to 4. Red Raiders, Mountaineers flip-flop spots. West Virginia won that game out in Morgantown. Yeah, no big problem. This week's showdown by the banks of the Brazos, where Bob Stoops and his Sooners come calling, and the head coach of the Sooners knows what kind of a fight he's in for.
You know what the biggest challenge in slowing him down is their run game. You have to deal with that, and which is very explosive, which then, only allows you to cover, the cover with so many people. So they get a lot of very explosive big plays in their passing game to go with their really strong running game. So it's tough to manage for sure.
And we talk about the way that Oklahoma has cranked things up offensively. They've won 4 straight games. They have had 4 straight games of 50 or more points, 600-plus yards in 3 straight games. And you talked last week. It has been their ability to run the football. They're 295 on the ground per game over this little stretch they've had. And K-State ran for 258 against Baylor. When you talk about Oklahoma's offense against Baylor's defense, is that kind of what it boils down to?
I want to answer that in 2 ways. Go back to that first set of numbers you talked about. The last 4 games, what did they do?
Well, they've scored 50 or more points in all 4, and they've had at least 600 yards in 3 of those.
And those teams are combined 11 and 25.
You're talking Kansas, Kansas State, Texas Tech. Yeah,
no,
you're right. You're right. It hasn't been TCU, it hasn't been Baylor or Oklahoma State, but they're confident at least.
They are. Look, this is going to boil on Saturday. This is going to boil down to Ty Darlington, Orlando Brown up front at the point of attack. I also like the matchup. Zach Sanchez on the defensive side of the ball in one-on-one situations with Corey Coleman. This is a great matchup. But I agree with you. The ground attack, OU's been on fire with their offensive line, with P. Ryan, with Mixon, running the football. And they're going to have to do that. They're going to want to do that because you don't want to leave Baylor out. You don't want to give Baylor 110 plays. You don't want to give Baylor 90 plays. In fact, if you could keep them to 60 or 70 by running the football all day and controlling the line of scrimmage, that's something you want to do.
Jarrett Stidham, his second start at quarterback for Baylor, obviously. This is the best defense that he will have faced. There's no doubt about it. Now, Oklahoma's got 19 sacks, 8 interceptions over these last 4 games, but you said it a moment ago. It's hard to get to the quarterback, and they don't throw many picks, Baylor does. So how do you see that matchup, that Baylor offense?
Good luck on sacking them.
Yeah.
The way Baylor runs their offense, first they spread you sideline to sideline with a lot of go routes, timing routes that they're very good at executing. They practice these all day, so it's very good to take as a defensive lineman or even a blitzing linebacker or a corner coming off the edge to get to those guys. So then it becomes kind of a track meet, almost a basketball game on turf where you're saying, okay, we're going to match the Corey Colemans of the world against your DBs on go routes, timing routes. And we'll see how you do.
Yeah.
It's not overly complex, but it's awfully effective.
What an incredible environment. Of course, ESPN College Game Day is going to be there all day long. Baylor has won 3 out of 4 games in this series from Oklahoma. This is, you begin to think about maybe a turning point. They've won 2 straight Big 12 titles, and Oklahoma before that was that team at the top of the league. For Big 12 supremacy, bragging rights, how big a game is this?
It's huge. For Baylor's going to continue. They need to keep getting these type of marquee wins and the titles so they can get into the national picture and kind of become one of those big brand names because then you kind of automatically get your box checked when playoff committee and rankings come. We talked about Iowa jumping 4 spots because they beat Indiana. It's a little odd. But Baylor just needs to continue to make those strides. I think the other thing also is, I'll get back to the scheduling thing. I think it would help them if in one of their first 3 games on a consistent basis they went out of state and they went and played a marquee program. I think that would help them tremendously in terms of national exposure and national respect.
The Oklahoma State Cowboys have thrust their name right into the middle of the conversation with their win over TCU this past week. They still have Oklahoma and Basil this week, John. This is kind of maybe butterscotch and chocolate. Sterling Shepard, the lateral back to Baker Mayfield. And somebody forgot about Dimitri Flowers, the fullback. He's left wide open.
That was real-time speed, right?
Yeah, that might be the easiest touchdown Baker Mayfield's thrown all this season. And Dimitri Flowers getting into the end zone needed the oxygen tank or a Sonic Shake of the Week when he was done. All right, John, you were 3-1 last week.
All right.
Good week for you. You missed TCU,
good.
Oklahoma State. Pick me some winners. How about Texas at West Virginia?
I think West Virginia gets it done. I think, obviously, they're going to have to run the football. I think Smallwood has a big day, but I think they win that game.
The trap game, Oklahoma State, Iowa State.
Too many big plays. Oklahoma State wins.
Too many big plays. All right, how about K-State, Texas Tech? Couple of teams fighting to get bowl.
Yeah, they're fighting. I like Texas Tech in that game. I think too much offense at the end of the day, especially in the fourth quarter.
All right, and after college game day and everybody clears out and we get down to business, Oklahoma at Baylor, who's your winner?
You know what? This spread has just come down.
It has.
It has come down and down. I just think Baylor's a different team at home. I think because they're at home, I think Baylor wins that game.
Wow. Can't wait to watch and see what impact that has on the college football playoff rankings next week. For John Berger, I'm Chad McKee. Talk to you next week on
Big 12 fans, don't panic yet, but it does appear that for a second year in a row, the conference faces an uphill climb to get one of its teams into the college football playoff. The latest committee rankings, Baylor holds at number 6, and Oklahoma State, despite beating TCU by 20 points this past weekend, is still buried down at number 8. The Big 12 got itself in this pickle by intentionally saving most of its big games until the end of the season. If either Baylor or Oklahoma State wins out and finishes undefeated, I do believe they will finish in the top 4. The problem is, if any of these teams are going to be a one-loss champion, there's just not enough time left to overcome that loss, whereas Alabama and Notre Dame suffered their losses early and have already moved into the top 4. So Big 12 is really all about Baylor or Oklahoma State running the table.
Hit me 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
I'm prepared tonight.
You were overdressed so much last week, it was embarrassing. All right, now, this is another week here, week 2 of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee rankings. Another week for us to get worked up about something that may not really matter for another 2 or 3 or 4 weeks here. But week 2 of the rankings, your biggest disagreement with the committee was where?
I don't know that I have a real big disagreement. I still have Ohio State ranked number 1 in the country. I knew the committee wouldn't, so that's not a huge disagreement. I think that when you look at the poll and what has happened, surprising to see Iowa jump up to number 5. The Big 12 felt disrespected last week, and I'm sure they still feel disrespected as Baylor stays at number 6.
Well, Joey, 2 things that stood out to me here was, number 1, looks like the committee really values defense with the top 4 they came out. And number 2, they also value personnel, probably attributed to the coaches in the room. So from your standpoint, 2 teams with 1 loss. Are you of the school that just because you have a loss, you can't be better than an undefeated team?
I'm not necessarily.
Clemson at number 1, Alabama at number 2, Ohio State at number 3.
I think we saw this with the selection committee, Tom.
No, you saw it first on Championship Drive on Monday night. Right here.
All right, I watched, yes.
What's that?
Quit your bickering. Quit your bickering.
Baylor at number 5.
Why Baylor at 5? Why the disagreement with the selection committee there?
I just think Baylor's skill right now would be so difficult for Iowa to handle. Iowa's well coached. They don't beat themselves. They're a gritty blue-collar unit. But athletically, it would be a mismatch, and you'd have to keep track. You'd have to keep volley with the scoreboard. I think that would be a struggle.
You probably thought that going into the Kansas State game.
Clemson, number 1. I've had them there for a few weeks. Number 2, I am going Ohio State. And number 3, Alabama. We'll put Bama there. And then this is where we differ. I'm going to go Baylor here. And I struggled with this one. I wanted Oklahoma State or Notre Dame. Went down to Notre Dame for me. Right
Okay.
there.
There you go.
Notre Dame at 5, Bama. Why Ohio State over Bama? Is that more resume than eye test?
Well, I think their defense is playing a lot better. We focus so much on J.T. Barrett and Cardell Jones and what's going on there. I think that's the reason for me. Their defense has really started to play well. And with J.T. Barrett potentially getting back in the starting lineup, this team is going to be a much better offensive team, especially if Double E runs the ball, Ezekiel Elliott.
Let's get some continuity at the quarterback position here. I mean, it's starting to get – it's funny for the first 6 weeks. Now it's time for Ohio State to get it going. You guys both had Baylor in your top 5. They're in the selection committee's top 6. There they are. Get to see them Saturday night, 8 o'clock Eastern time on ABC and the Watch ESPN app as they take on Oklahoma. What might we have as exciting a finish there as we had last Saturday in Lincoln?
Armstrong, and the receiver was out of bounds. He
you could possibly have, and they can run the football. Then I'm going to take LSU. I'm going to put them there at number 3. Utah has proven its worth to this point. I'm still going to have Ohio State right here. I'm going to put them there for now.
Okay, Cohen, you saw him touch those things and put them over there. Touch anyone that you think belongs there at number 1, and you touch it, and then touch the number 1. So go for it.
Got it.
Okay, you touched it, and okay, you got Stanford at number 5. Why is Stanford the 5th best team right now? What do you think?
Because they play really good.
Okay, put another team up at number 4. Oh, he must have daddy's vertical leap. All right, we got Texas A&M there at number 4.
Looking good.
Why Texas A&M?
Because they play really good.
Yeah, and it was one you could definitely reach. All right, is there another one here that you like that you want to hit for number 3?
How about here? I'm going to lift you up, and you tell me which one you're going to push. Ooh, Utah at number 3.
Oh, wow. Number 3.
Pretty good.
Okay. Hit a couple of more. Give me another team you like. Jump a little bit higher. You know, keep going. One more.
I think he's going for Stanford twice.
Do we, have we ever lowered the touchscreen? No, we can't do that.
No scroll.
All right. Is there another one that you like? Okay.
Clemson.
All right, Clemson at 2. At number 2. Okay. Now
he likes that win versus Notre Dame.
You've had very different answers. Why Clemson at number 2?
Because they play really good.
I mean, we're just kind of. This is about as good analysis as we get on this show.
That's exactly right.
It really is. All right. And the best team in college football is. Hit another one.
All right, let's see. Who's it going to be? I'm going to. Ooh. Baylor Bears.
Wow.
What is it that you like about the Baylor Bears, Cohen?
Because I like when they make touchdowns.
And they make a lot of them.
And they make a lot of them. Again,
70
logic.
points a pop.
I knew they will.
You knew they would, and we knew you would pick Baylor with a little assist from your friends. We'll get a lower touch screen, we hope, or maybe a ladder the next time. Everyone's stomping to the beat now. Stomp our way out of here. This is Power Hour on ESPNU.